Thank you, Bob. I appreciate that. That's what you do. That's why you're Bob Moran. Hi, everybody. Welcome. Hello. Thank you so much for joining us. You are currently at Rocket House. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for being here on a beautiful Saturday afternoon. We are here in the glorious Rockefeller Plaza on this beautiful day, just 2 days before the U.S. Open. My name is Caitlin Thompson. I'm the founder of Racket, and we are thrilled to be here, thanks to Tishman's Fire and all the incredible panelists I'm about to introduce. First of all, I just want to say, for me, convening minds in the tennis space as a journalist, as somebody who makes a print magazine, and as somebody who has the privilege of working alongside athletes, leaders, change makers, is the privilege of a lifetime. And no Racket House would be complete without us getting really smart people together to talk about really big things. And women's tennis has undergone an insane and an amazing journey over the last 51 years. So I hope you guys give a hearty round of applause for this incredible panel that I have asked to assemble to talk about the topic of the future of women's tennis today. And I think each of them, I want to hear a lot of applause. So let's really hear it. All right. Starting with Arij Almutabagani, is the president of STF. She oversees the sport's rapid evolution in Saudi. She has begun the role in 2021. And the last few months have been particularly busy for her because in October, the country sent its first ever team to the Billie Jean King Cup and is responsible for the Women's Tennis Association's move to the finals in Riyadh for the next 3 years. Thank you so much for being with us. It's an honor to have you on the panel and to introduce you in a lot of ways to some of the folks in this audience. So thank you. Immediately next to me is Ginny Ehrlich. She is the CEO of the USTA Foundation. She leads all aspects of the USTA Foundation, strategic vision, growing junior development, and she is also the product of junior tennis development herself, and is a passionate advocate for the development of juniors. Thank you so much for being here, Ginny. We really appreciate it. Bob Moran has spent the last 24 years as a leader in the tennis community. Under Bob's leadership, the Credit One Charleston Open was named the WTA 500 Tournament of the Year in 2022 and 2023. He serves as the America's representative on the WTA Tournament Council and as a board member of the WTA Association. He also oversees both the Western and Southern Open, that is Cincinnati to you lay persons, as well as Charleston.
It's officially the Cincinnati Open now, Caitlin. So
it is officially the Cincinnati Open, and it is by all accounts the best tournament on American soil. Are we allowed to say that 2 days before the U.S. Open?
I'll take it.
I think you should.
Yeah, we're with you.
And lastly, we've got Shelby Rogers. If anybody did not know, Shelby Rogers just announced her retirement. This will be her last tournament. She is a longtime tour favorite. She's from South Carolina, the beautiful city of Charleston. She turned pro in 2009. Her powerful ground strokes have resulted in wins over top 10 players. We could name a few because they're not impressive. And she's won 6 singles titles, 2 doubles titles on the ITF, and a quarterfinal appearance at Roland Garros in the US Open, reaching top 30 in the world. And I just want to end, you are a perennial fan favorite. Everybody loves you. We will be sad to miss you, and we hope you go out with a bang.
And our Billie Jean King Cup title.
And your Billie Jean King Cup title, which is relevant to this favorite, which is actually a really good place to start. Let's talk a little bit about Billie Jean King Cup, because today's panel is all about how we grow the game and how it is growing internationally. And I also, because I have some Americans on the panel, want to talk about how we can cross-pollinate. What are things the U.S. is doing particularly well? What are things that other regions are doing particularly well? I'm going to start with an anecdote, and then I promise I'll get to the questions. 20 years ago, I moved to Beijing, China to be a journalist. I had quit college tennis, didn't look back, didn't see a single tennis court. China now has an Olympic gold medal. What happened in 20 years? One of the questions that I want to get to today is, let's figure out how this pipeline and this international cooperation can result in tennis growing not only in our own backyard, but also internationally. All right, so let's start with you, Bob. Tennis has never been more global. The diversity of champions has reached new heights every year. How do you think about drawing connections between where you represent the United States and other parts of the world?
Well, I think it's a great point. I think tennis is truly the one global sport amongst all sports. We have tennis players at all of our events representing 70 plus countries. We're broadcast to 175 plus markets. So when you talk professional sports, number one on the list for global is tennis, because players come from all over. We're broadcast all over. And that sport does bring people together. It doesn't matter. You're from a player perspective, and Shelby can speak to this, you get to know players from every corner of the world. And from a tournament director perspective, we're doing the same. We're getting to know the players. We're understanding the relationships. We're understanding their traditions. We're understanding what their wants and needs are when we're hosting. All things that go into our process. But in general, the global aspect of our sport is what makes it the most attractive sport in the world.
Completely agree. Arij, can you speak a little bit to what, given the junior development being such a huge part of your focus in Saudi, but also where it's going very quickly in the country, what are some of the best in class examples you're looking to when you think about what other countries are doing really well and what you want to see replicated?
Tennis in Saudi Arabia has just started. We had tennis for a long time. But regarding the junior development, we have started to make partnerships and alliances with the big governing bodies like the BTP, the WTA, the ITF, and bringing these international champions to the country so we can learn from them and follow some of the ways of developing their players. I think interaction and seeing firsthand your stories, playing tennis will help our nation grow the sport, because it's an unknown sport kind of in Saudi Arabia.
Correct.
So we first have to have them see the sport. We have introduced the tennis now in schools.
Yeah.
At all the events that we have, like in the parks, we have malls, activities. So we have a lot of community engagement. So we first have to get the mass getting to know the sport, and then starting to take care of the players, having national tournaments, international juniors tournaments, right? And then going to the tournament. So we are learning. We're still in a learning curve. We have a long way to go. I hope it'd be like China and have, a champion soon enough.
Yes.
But we're moving and transforming very fast. And we're taking advantage of these big cannons that are coming. The WTA finals are going to be great. The next gen last year. So we're looking forward to it. And having international tournaments for juniors in Saudi Arabia has had a huge impact on the juniors.
And that leads me into a question both for you, Ginny, and also Shelby. And Ginny, I'll start with you. One of the things that I know you're the most passionate about, and also the USTA Foundation is the most focused on, is getting people their first tennis experience, getting people their first tournament experience, really the beginning part of the pipeline. Obviously the game is getting marketed in a more and more sophisticated manner at the highest levels. The USTA mints money from the pro side, but from the foundation side, where are you seeing the rubber meet the road, and how are you seeing this groundswell of juniors from a recreational perspective?
Yeah, at the USTA Foundation, when we think of junior development, we think of using tennis as a vehicle to create thriving human beings who can live their best life story, whatever that might be. And really making sure that when young people from under-resourced communities in particular look at a tennis court, they don't see the fence, but they see the door. They see it as a sport that is open to them and has access to them. And while what we do is really use tennis in education to really get young people on the right path, and then provide the high performance training that for those who have the potential to play high school or college and professional tennis, what they need, despite whatever resources their families can't provide. That's what we're about, is really keeping that door open and changing the way in which the sport is perceived as a sport for all. And we also have some great stories. We have 3 young women who were in the qualifying rounds that came out of our programs this year. So
that's amazing. Yes, that's amazing. And I know, Shelby, you grew up in the USTA junior system, as did I. We're probably around the same age, so, shocked I didn't see you in any of those tournaments. what was your impression of the pipeline and the junior development? And where do you think, you're going to be looking back on this sport this time next year? Where do you hope that those gains continue to get made?
Yeah, so I guess I'll start by speaking to the accessibility. I was fortunate enough and super grateful to have grown up in Charleston, South Carolina, where there was a professional tournament. I could go as a kid and watch the best players in the world, be exposed to that level really early. I was a ball girl. I was able to just see what it took for, some of those players to train and compete at that level. And it was really inspiring. It sort of started my dream to want to be a professional tennis player. And going from there, I was really also fortunate to be able to practice with a lot of other great players that were able to push me to be better. Other American players that went on to play either high level college or, whatever path they took. And then also other Americans that then broke into the tour as well. And we all pushed each other. I think it's no secret that a lot of times you see, no matter what country, the Italians, for example, recently have been doing really well.
Yeah, they're everywhere.
Like comes all at one time and you see someone else doing it like, oh, I used to practice with them or I grew up next to them. If they can do it, why can't I? And it sort of becomes a bit more realistic, I think. So being able to have an amazing peer group around you. And I'm not saying, that means everybody move to Orlando and train at USTA Center. No, there's different hubs around the US. The US is massive, so many different states. And so seeing some support with, I live in South Florida where there's a lot of tennis players too. We can all practice together and push each other at the same time and come up as a group together. And then when that happens, I feel like, I don't know, you can go from there, inspire other people. And it's sort of a snowball type situation.
Yeah, I think it's a virtuous circle, which I think, one of the things that I wanted to ask Arij, because she's been quoted as sort of saying, as amazing as it is that this region, the MENA region, is getting better and better and bigger tournaments, that's not really the focus of your work. It's way more about what you just described, Shelby, which is getting access, getting kids in rackets. I read somewhere, and you can tell me if this is true, that your introduction to the sport was one club in Jeddah, sort of tucked away behind. It wasn't a very high profile, accessible, maybe a sport. Can you talk a little bit about, as cool as it is that tournaments go into new places, and in a little bit we'll be joined by someone who represents the Asia region and how fast that has grown, especially in the last decade and a half. But talk a little bit about what Shelby just said in terms of where you guys are right now, where STF is right now, and how you get to that next step. Because it doesn't sound like it's more pro tournaments. It actually sounds like it's more of what Ginny and Shelby were talking about.
Actually, bringing the next gen, like Shelby was saying, when you see the champions right in front of you, you get the inspiration, right? But that's not enough. So what we started to do is we started promoting tennis in schools. So we started with 30 schools in 2023. This year we have 90 schools, and hopefully we're going to 400 schools. So we have around 30,000 kids that have held rackets in their hands. Okay, so this is the first step where you do the mass participation.
Right.
And then you start, from those kids, you start training them. So we have national tournaments, but now we started with ITF junior tournaments. That's where they're going to become better and better and mix with the better players. So like in 2022, we had only one ITF ranked player in Saudi Arabia. Today, we have 20.
20. 1 to 20.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's just because we had in 2022 our first ITF junior.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Okay. And then in 2023, we had 2. So, and this year we're going to have 5. And then we're going to have increased the number of tournaments so they have exposure. Kids from the region can come.
Right.
And then that's where you get the experience. That big tournaments are nice to have because they get the inspiration. You get to see your idols playing right in front of you, and then you get inspired. Like bringing Rafa Nadal as an ambassador. You cannot imagine the impact that had on our kids. One of the kids said, I'm going to train every day. I'm going to practice. I'm going to be a champion. Just by seeing them.
And you meet someone who
believing.
Right.
So this is, and we're working on it. We don't have infrastructure ready yet, the appropriate, but we're building it. So we're working on parallel. We're trying to take care of the whole tennis ecosystem and build it the right way. We're just starting. We're moving fast, I have to admit. So we're right on the right track. That's why we need, the help of all the tennis associations in the world that we can learn from. We have to adapt it to our country. That's fine. But we want to give equal opportunities for boys and girls to experience what Shelby was saying, to have this kind of group, they can play it and practice well.
I think that's such a great point. And I'm not great at math, but everything you just said sounded increasing and exponentially so, in fact. And it actually reminds me of a trip I took last year to Charleston, where I got to see not only the world-class Women's Tennis Association tournament that has won awards for a couple of years in a row running, but also the academy that's situated there and the work that goes in and day out when the best players in the world are not there. And Bob, that felt to me like it was purpose-built from the beginning. It didn't feel like it was grafted on as a way for kids to cool their heels between practice sessions. Can you talk a little bit about the educational component of the Charleston setup? Because to me, it really struck me like this is an investment in these kids as human beings in a way that will sure make them better tennis players, but also actually make the tennis ecosystem a little bit richer.
No, absolutely. And I think I'll go back to the commentary because I'm very excited about what we're doing in Saudi Arabia from a WTA perspective. Shelby was a 7-year-old ball girl for us in Charleston.
And look at her now.
I know. But it's no surprise to me that when you look at a market like Charleston, we have a professional women's tennis tournament and we have 2 athletes, and Shelby and Emma Navarro have reached the highest points of professional tennis. So the inspiration, the aspiration is there, but you also have to have the building blocks, which is the development at the lower level and I will call the top level, that funnel up here where you're trying to put rackets in as many children's hands as you can, get them involved with the game, but also provide that pathway all the way through, be it college, be it professional tennis. All of those are opportunities that we provide through the academies, and that they're 5 years old all the way to 17 years old. We're trying to provide that pathway where we believe tennis is not just a great sport for the athletic part of that, but it's also a great sport to become a better person. And we use that every day in our academies. We use that every day in life in Charleston. So it is intentional, and we want to provide opportunities all the way from 5 years old to where Shelby is today.
That's right. And you can see it when you visit. You see the authentic community engagement and how much that tournament means to that city and its residents from 7 going on professional athlete. And I wonder now, especially as you have expanded into the Cincinnati Open, which is a combined major tournament, what are some of how was that leap, and how for you guys was changing the approach now? I'm assuming not top down, but assuming a little bit different in terms of how it was built.
Cincinnati is a huge leap. We're going to a Masters 1000, which is right below the Grand Slams. And again, it's no surprise that Cincinnati has created some professional tennis players, both on the men's and women's side.
Absolutely.
And that's, again, the inspirational aspect of that. Our plans are definitely to bring a day-to-day aspect to tennis in Cincinnati. Unfortunately, Cincinnati has been a place where they run the professional event at the venue, which is a great venue, which we're going to expand for 2025. And part of those expansion plans are bring day-to-day tennis, bring an academy, bring juniors, be a host for tennis in the Midwest, not just those 2 weeks of the year, but the rest of the year. Where can we make a difference in tennis in Cincinnati and in the greater Midwest?
And actually, Ginny, that brings me to a question that I've been curious about you, because as we've talked, you guys have such a regional first approach, which I think is really important. Obviously there's some places, I played junior tennis out of Atlanta that happens to have a ton of resources, as is Florida. There's some places that really need it. And how do you think regionally in terms of how to make the most impact, how to address maybe some shortages, and where you can be most impactful, even if it's, maybe work that needs to start a little bit earlier, a little bit more fundamental?
Yeah. So we work with more than 250 community-based organizations. And I think the answer to that is that we trust the community-based organizations to tell us what's going to work in that community. And that's really important, right? Because Charleston and Cincinnati are probably drastically different approaches. And I think that we have some common ingredients. We can provide resources. But what we want to do is say, how are you going to bring tennis to the community and then use it as that life skills development? Get young people ready for life, whether it be on the court, off the court, whether it be to build out different career paths that aren't professional and collegiate. So I'm thinking of a young person I knew when I started playing in Portland, Oregon, who now owns one of 2 racket shops in the entire city of Portland, Oregon.
Wow.
And he started within our community system, right? And so I think there's just so much opportunity to, as I was listening to everyone, I keep thinking of Billie Jean King's Grateful to seeing it and being it, right? To be it.
Yep.
And I think that's what it's all about. And we really trust our community organizations to tell us what they need in their communities and be excited to support that.
I think that's probably very smart and also probably adds to greater impact, right? If you come in top down and tell you, this is what I think you need, chances are the adoption rate is probably smaller, right?
Right.
I want to be specific at this point in the discussion because everybody feels good about putting brackets in kids' hands. We've done it all day the last couple of days. Every one of us in this panel has done it. Shelby, you've coached here at Racket House. But let's talk about women specifically. This panel is called the Future of Women's Tennis for a reason. And I want to be thoughtful about both an emerging region where you made a very specific point, Arij, to say that you want to get rackets in the hands of boys and girls. You're hosting the WTA finals for the women, which is amazing, for 3 years' time. That's quite a commitment. And I also want to have a general conversation about where we think women's sports are right now, because they are, in this country, pretty good. Have they surpassed tennis? And is tennis doing enough to keep up? Arij, let's start with you just in terms of the women part of that. How are you looking at it, and how are you looking at it perhaps as a way to make social change or to create a greater, sort of regional note?
Actually, sports in general in Saudi Arabia among women has increased 300%. 300%.
Wow.
Since 2015. We are having more. We've had in 2019, 90 women registered playing tennis. Today we have 700. I manage, luckily, to have the juniors under 10 because we have less girls. But I make combined tournaments for the juniors under 10 where boys and girls can compete against each other. And the girls were always beating the boys. Yeah, we managed to send the first junior Billie Jean King Cup team to Sri Lanka in February 2023. We sent the ladies the same year in October at Bahrain. So we had the first, and it's huge for us in Saudi Arabia, to have female and to have the WTA finals in Saudi Arabia. It's the first ever only female event that happened. We have had around 100 international events coming to Saudi Arabia since 2018.
This is the first one that is female only.
Exactly.
That's stunning.
This is great.
It is great.
We have around 30 females across all the sports federations. Female have to represent 30% of the boards in the federations in Saudi Arabia. And so there is a huge push for female participation. When we promote tennis, we promote it equally between boys and girls, of course. But we see that girls are more inclined, and we're having great results. And we're happy about the success that we're having in introducing tennis to the female, because we see that they want to participate, whether tennis players, whether coaches or officials or just organizers and events or physiotherapists, So I'm encouraging that actually in the federation, and the CEO is here. I think the majority of the employees are female. I'm proud to say that. Even on my board, we are 4 females, almost 40%. So I'm really proud to say that there is a huge female movement in Saudi Arabia across all the board. I mean, I'm not saying in sports, but in general.
Yes.
But in tennis specifically, I see that we have a huge potential.
I was talking to Barbara Krejcikova yesterday, and I said, why does every other person in the Czech Republic who's a woman win a Grand Slam? Because it feels like they have probably 40 people in their country and 20 of them have won Grand Slams. And basically she was just saying, we make the women play tennis. It's just a tradition, and it's the strongest female voices And then, as we're talking about its representation, pivoting a little bit, and I'm looking at my two American colleagues here at the end of the panel, tennis was ahead of the game in terms of marketing, in terms of being a prize money granting sport. Have we fallen behind a little bit?
I think you still have to go back to the point right now that 7 of the top 10 top earning women's sports
athletes, period, yes,
are women's tennis players. We have equal prize money at the Grand Slams. We have them at a few of our premier mandatory events. And I can tell you every meeting we have is about driving the equal prize money conversation. And it's about all of us coming together to promote women's tennis, both to our partners, to our broadcasters, to all of those worlds. Now, yeah, WNBA, women's soccer in the U.S. is growing. That's great. And I think tennis has been that leader for a long time, will continue to be that leader. And I think every other women's sport that continues to rise will continue to drive women's tennis as well. All right. So we talked about the global sport and working together, getting to know people. And I just saw Charles Hsiung just came in. Charles is one of my brothers from China who runs events in China and many others in the Asia Pacific region. And I'm going to tap out and let Charles tap in so you can stay in that seat and make this an easy transition for you.
Welcome, Charles Hsiung, and thank you so much, Bob Moran. Welcome to our panel on the future of women's tennis, which is a topic I know you care deeply about. And you are growing this game so much in the entire region of Asia. But talk to me about what has happened in Asia in the last 20 years in terms of growing the game, specifically of women's tennis. It's been unbelievably incredible to watch. And I wonder what lessons other people from other regions, us included, can take from what the incredible work that has happened in Singapore, in Korea, in China. I was just saying, Chen Wenjung has a gold medal. And 20 years ago, when I lived in Beijing, China, I couldn't find a tennis court. What an incredible 2 decades. What do you attribute that to?
I think the players perform very well. And people from the West really look at the Far East as something that they don't know, just like many of us when we talk about Riyadh, or where is Riyadh, how does it look like? So I think when we started, I think we got to some gold medalists for the doubles in the women's. And then Lena got the Grand Slams. One of the Grand Slams in Australian Open, right? And I think this growth started from Beijing and Shanghai, and then sort of we expanded to Korea, Singapore recently, Thailand as well. So it basically has to do with the organization and a good partner like APG working together. Yeah, I think we have wonderful people at the WTA Tour, which really contributes to growth and inspiration to women's tennis.
One of the things I want to emphasize, and this is maybe the journalist in me, but I want to emphasize where I think cross-pollination and lessons learned can sort of speed growth, right? We have so many different examples of success now and so many different ways that different regions have come into the sport. Obviously having an incredible history of tennis like we do in places like the UK or Australia make the pipeline easy and always replenishing. When you're breaking into a new region or you're breaking into new regions of a country that hasn't typically been accessed, I think it saves you a lot of time if you can look at what other people are doing and how they're doing it and how well they're doing it so they can replicate it. And I wonder, Arij, this question will go back to you because now that Charles has joined us, I do think there's more of an emerging market sort of theme we can lean into. Who do you look to who is doing really well in terms of growing the game and connecting the grassroots and the youth to the professional game? And where would you like to see Saudi be in maybe 10 years' time in terms of its footprint?
I think that we're looking at it's not just one country in specific, but a certain federation. I think we want to learn from everyone and try to, now the Italian Tennis Federation has produced a lot of great tennis players.
Yeah, Shelby, great point about the Italians.
So we'd like from them. I've already made connections with them, and they're all willing to help. So looking at the different countries, of course, you have to look at Saudi Arabia. You have to look at the culture, the tradition. each country has different things that we need to really take care of. But we want to learn from people who have surpassed us, okay, and have done it, and we learn from them, and we kind of take like the easy way. Not the easy way, we adapt it, but I mean,
Well, if the path is already there, you might as well walk.
Exactly.
Right.
So we've trying to learn from the Asian Tennis Federation, from the ITF, from the WTA, from the ATP, learning from everyone, and I think there is a lot to learn from each one individually, and all the accumulation of their knowledge and their backgrounds and their experience. I think when these events come also to Saudi Arabia, they bring a lot of knowledge and they bring a lot of expertise with them. So all the people who come and attend the events, or even the players that are engaged, with the programs that we have along the WTA finals and the next gen, these, like you said, cross-companion, we're having great ambassadors like Judy, we have Garbini, we have other people coming. So this is what the impact these people are going to have to our community, to our society at different levels. So this is what we're trying to learn as much as we can along the way, from whoever comes and whoever offers us like a hand, and we're just going to take it. We cannot go, we can go up and we can go sideways. So vertical and horizontal. This is take advantage. This is the way. If you work in silos, then you're not going to get anywhere.
Yeah, you don't get very far very fast.
Even we're engaging with other government entities, with different ministries to introduce tennis and try to find ways where we can tap into their programs that can, they have a lot of like community engagement programs, different bigger companies, or like the Ministry of Tourism, like the DIF, so we're trying to tap into everyone and anyone that can promote tennis and help us grow.
Smart. Yeah, be opportunistic.
Yep.
Shelby, this is a question for you. You've traveled the world how many years in a row?
15.
You've spent 15 years trans-navigating the entire world. You've played in pretty much every continent. You've seen and dealt with, not only as a representative on our BJK Cup squad, award-winning squad, but also as a player. Where do you think, which countries, where are the ones where you were like, oh, that's something we should bring back to the USTA, or that's something I would love to see happen in Asia, or I'd love to see this happen or adopted across the entire tennis ecosystem?
Yeah, I think I'll start by saying that there's so many ways to be a great tennis player. Like, it's not A plus B equals C. And in the States, we see people can go to college. You turn pro right after graduating high school. You can play a bunch of junior tournaments. You can play just a little and, train a little bit more. Like, there's just so many pathways to get to the top. And you were explaining that you can take a lot of different ideas from different people. For me, something that I've really liked when I've been traveling is Australia, for example, or even France, and the US has it now too. But if you have a facility where everything's in one place, it's really accessible, it's convenient, you can have a lot of resources behind you. And I think now the game too, you have so many resources with social media and technology, and it just levels the playing field a little bit more, where when I was kind of coming up through the juniors, it was like the top players had these amazing teams and they had so many resources that I couldn't even access. And now I feel like it's leveled a little bit. Yes, the top players are still in the league of their own.
Yes.
But it's a little more accessible where, okay, I can Google like a top workout and just like go do it. You know what I mean? But what I've seen is, and I was talking this earlier, when you have a group of players pushing each other and you have the facilities and you have the resources and you don't have to drive an hour to and from practice every day, and you can recover better, and it's just the little details that make such a big difference. And you don't realize that when you're a kid at training and just having fun. But as the years go on, it starts to add up. And so things that are, I don't want to say convenient, but, that just makes sense, like common sense. You know what I mean?
Completely right. And I have a similar question for you, Charles. The speed at which this became a premier, fan engaging, local talent developing, international draw, mixed with tourism and mixed with the kind of marketing that I think is really modern, happened very quickly. Did you specifically see and emulate things other federations were doing or other countries were doing?
I will start with saying that to be humbly proud that APG really contributed to the mind map of the Asian strategy. I mean, we started with Wuhan, Beijing,
Yes.
and then Tianjin, Zhuhai. But then I think phenomenally, I guess women's tennis in particular, I mean, you haven't seen any Chinese men really picking up a gold medal.
I mean, Zhu Zhang has a silver now.
Except, yeah. So I think that also fostered the growth in a very phenomenal manner. Okay. Apart from what we are able to do in certain cities, and then it expanded very, very quickly in the last 20 years. I mean, I was very naive in tennis when I first started it, and it just grew. I think we landed about 9 events and we serviced around 20 countries.
That's amazing.
For this. So I guess, also people in the media, and particularly nowadays with social media, as you said, I mean, news spread very quickly. People learn very hard. And the government contributed a lot to normally fund all these things. But it takes time to build the soul into the sports. Okay, it's just not about doing a great job, but it's about having the passion to be inspired and self-motivated to go ahead. And I think the federation, the companies, private entities like APG, and also a lot of hardworking females and athletes, they all contributed to the success of the events.
Let me get everyone to join me in a huge round of applause for a passionate, successful, incredibly inspirational, and awesome woman who is going to be playing her last U.S. Open. We are going to be cheering our faces off for you. Thank you so much for joining us, Shelby. Thank you for it's a really privilege and a pleasure to have you. Congratulations on an amazing career. Okay, as we wrap up with a few more questions, the same question to you, Ginny, because one of the things that I loved learning about you the most is that your career took you in and out of tennis. And the idea that we need to be, and I think Charles would agree with me because I know we've spoken about this at length, we need to be looking at other industries. We need to be looking at other sports. We need to be looking at other ways of engaging community. For me as a media person, I came from the outside in. I was a political journalist and I brought a lot of ideas into the sports world because of that. What are your North Stars and where are you bringing inspiration from outside of the tennis space into the work you're doing at the USTA Foundation?
Yeah, I think that's true. And it goes back to what we were talking about in terms of other women's sports really rising. We should celebrate that.
Yes.
I think for me, as I think about it, and I think we've talked about accessibility and Shelby was talking about, it needs to be easy, right? It needs to be something that is easy. So in addition to really ensuring that our community-based organizations put hands in the rackets of young people more to the youth we serve are female. So we're really excited about that in terms of really continuing to grow the game for girls and young women. But it's also refurbishing public courts. More than 70% of tennis is played on public courts.
That's right.
And we need to make sure that in under-resourced communities, there are public courts that are safe places to play. And so that's something we're really working on as well, to ensure that courts are accessible to all youth people and girls, and that they're encouraged to use them and that they feel like they're theirs. The other thing is around career pathways. Across all sports in the U.S., 75% of youth coaches are male. So if we really want girls and young women to see a career path with tennis, whether it be on the courts or as a journalist, we need to provide examples and provide pathways to really understand what career options are available so that women can lead in sports in addition to play sports.
Amen. I would have loved to have seen more female faces. The first media room I went into for the first tournament I covered, and I've tried very hard to leave the door wide open behind me and hire women to write about this sport because they bring in new fans and new audience members. Arij, how do you think about the looking from the outside in to bring in inspiration and ideas from other sectors?
Actually, my main goal whenever we have these international tournaments is that, like the WTA, it's going to be like the next 3 years, maybe more. The next gen is for the next 4 years. We had the first edition last year. After that, they're gone. So what did they leave us? What's the legacy? So I always try to introduce or plug in and I make sure that tennis people are very helpful. WTA likewise, is that I always have Saudi male and female participate in these events, whether in the organization, whether they're the whole kids, in officiating, physiotherapists, across the board, because this is going to be something that will stay with us.
Yes.
And then this is something that is going to spread. A little example, last year for the next gen, I had a female physiotherapist shadow the ATP doctors. She went and applied that on her patients. And the patients really said, "Oh, Dr. Lama, you did something new today. We feel really good. This is something new technique." She said, "Yeah, I learned this at the next gen." So these are all very live examples, and you can learn from them firsthand. This is what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to introduce, I'm trying to promote. We had also a group of girls from the university design the trophy for the next gen. So we had 5 teams, and then the winning team got and designed the trophy for the next gen. So I'm trying to have everyone from the Saudi nationals, whether boys or girls, participate in these events, because that's how we learn, like you said, cross-contamination. This is what we learn.
And also engaging the art community, engaging the people from the marketing and the
Everything.
that makes more people have investment if you like.
Podcasters, from the marketing, some media, everything. So you engage everyone, and they take part in these big events, where then when you have our own events, it doesn't have to be tennis. It could be anything else. So this is what we're trying to do with all of what's happening in tennis and in sports in general.
I have a lot of follow-up questions, and I definitely want to see that trophy. And the person sitting next to me has done that unbelievably well. Charles, you've done an incredible job getting buy-in from players, from governing bodies, from federations, and from marketing and brands and sponsors. I didn't give your big introduction because most of it was, this man has transformed the region and also gotten every single sponsor you've ever heard of to give money to tennis. And for those of us in tennis, that part of it cannot be undersold. That part of it cannot be understated. Getting brands and people to support and spend money on this sport is why we still have a sport. And so thank you on behalf of tennis for doing that. And also, I wanted to ask you about Singapore, which is now going to be getting, again, a WTA tournament that your company, APG, is running and producing. Talk about how important it is to have a tournament in a place like Singapore. Is that a strategic decision on your part? And if so, how does it go into the whole APG sort of thesis?
Well, it is a strategic, to answer your last part. I think it is a strategic plan, and we work very hard with Singapore. Imagine Singapore runs the finals in the past.
Yes.
Right? So suddenly they have a 250. They were like, wow, what's going on? So we work very hard with them. And most recently, I think a week ago, the Prime Minister of Singapore says sport is something which is healthy, and they want to cultivate that sport. Tourism, Singapore being one of the safest places in Asia, as we all know.
With the best food,
yeah,
it should be said.
And all cultures, Indian, Chinese, you name it. I mean, there are so many cultures, and they can coexist so happily together. I've never seen this in many other countries. I did them. So I'm very proud that we are in Singapore after a lot of hard work. And I believe that tournament is going to grow over the years, to be a better tournament. But I think we are very happy that, we are not just focused on money. Yes. I mean, we have brands from Rolex to you name it. I mean, a lot of international brands. I mean, all of them work with China. Right. Most of them, I would say, including planes and all this stuff. So I wouldn't deny, in a very humble way, that, as a very simple person from where I came from, I just keep on working hard. I keep doing what is necessary. Then I keep doing what is possible. And I found that I've done the impossible. And I think this is a message that I think I would convey to even our players, that they should keep playing the game and try to inspire other people to be a better version of themselves. I think that motivates me a lot to be where I am. I don't need to work for money, as you know, but I really work hard because of the passion that we have. and what women can do. In Chinese, there's the saying that a woman's hand can lift half the sky.
That's right.
So I would say, you should give applause to women.
Yes.
Thank you.
On that note, a note we can all agree on, please join me in thanking my incredible panelists. The future of women's tennis is bright, a lot of which has to do with the minds on today's panel, for which I am grateful. Thank you all so much. Ginny, Arij, Charles, thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So, you're not a note.